Howdy guys, welcome to another episode from the Foundry where I give monkey brain advice to DMs and general tips and how-to guys using my campaign as an example. Today we're going to be covering uncommon creatures to use in a forest encounter for tier 1 play. These are going to be monsters that I feel are underutilized in D&D and just unique encounter ideas where you can utilize them. These are balanced using my balancing methodology, which you can see in one of my previous videos, but as a quick summary, it is based on a party of 4, 2 of which will be martial classes, 2 of which would be either casters or half casters, meaning at level 1 they will have 4 actions or 4 attacks, and at level 5 they will have 6 actions or 6 attacks, with the martial classes having multi-attack. Let's go ahead and get started. So these encounters are broken up into what I would consider deadly encounters or boss fights and regular encounters for the party to undergo. For level 1, as a deadly encounter, you could have the, I think it's called the Keyydark with 1 giant wolf spider in the forest. There are 2 varying stat blocks for the Keyydarks. I personally recommend using kind of like a hybrid of both, where if the Keyydark has managed to sneak up on the party or is going to surprise the party, you use the variant that has the Garrot ability, and then once they are in combat with each other, you switch over to the regular stat block that doesn't have that ability anymore. In my opinion, that keeps the lore of them and the fun of them all in the same package, or you can just add the Garrot ability to the basic stat block yourself, and that's perfect, that's awesome. And you can have this super cool, crazy, giant spider monster thing that, is kind of like a shepherd to the wolf spider, its pet, more or less. In that type of situation, I would highly recommend doing more spider or web slinging type feel or encounter, just based on the lore around Keyydarks, where they like to really drag down and kill off the forest, choking it out with their webs and hunting Fae down. But another example for a deadly encounter would be 2 man traps. As the party is going through the forest, they could get too close, and the man trap uses its alluring ability to bring them in and then, well, do what it's called, trap them. That could be a very exciting type battle to implement some more of the nature, natural, plant-based monsters in D&D that aren't utilized as much. If you wanted to do a more nature-based or plant-based monsters, another deadly fight would be the awakened tree with like 5 or 6 awakened shrubs. I won't be talking about Ents or Trents in this, just because I feel like they are a little bit more common than the awakened ones. Because the awakened ones, I feel like a nice low level version of those creatures to really bring them out and expose them to the party. Now, I know my normal balancing methodology is to give the enemy side roughly the same amount of actions as the party, but because the awakened shrubs do so little damage and have so few hit points, I don't think it's an issue to really pump up that number in comparison to the 1 awakened tree. As for regular encounters that you can throw at the party at level 1, you could do something like 4 sturges. These are like giant mosquito things that aren't bugs, but these weird little like sucker bats that just attach onto the party and start sucking them dry. And similarly to my Arctic video where I mentioned the Bloodhogs, Monkey DM talks about flavoring things as a swarm while keeping the stat block the same as the single sturge, which I think would be great for this encounter in particular, where it looks like a whole swarm of these guys are swarming onto one player and just sucking them dry, but it's still just doing the damage of a single sturge to them, just to make the encounter feel more scary and intense. Another example, if you didn't want to do the sturges, but you still want to do something kind of flying in and swooping down on the party, you could do flying snakes. They don't do much damage themselves. I think it's 1 piercing damage. The real damage comes from the poison effects that the party has to contend with. If you want to do a little bit more Fae type creatures, like with the Keyydark, he's not Fae in particular, but to go along with this idea of they're more in a Fae type forest, you can bring in 2 Darklings. Darklings are actually really interesting lore-wise, being, elves or Fae creatures that have been cursed and doomed to live in the darkness, and they're kind of little nasty buggers, and I personally really like them. If you want to do something that was a little bit more scary and really forcing the party to utilize more of the resources and really think outside of the box, you could use 2 skulks. Now, if you do use these, I would highly recommend doing a little bit of foreshadowing to let the party know on how to even face these monsters in general, because they are invisible if you're not looking through a mirror, or if you don't have a child with you to like point them out. I would highly recommend doing some type of foreshadowing or putting them in an environment in the forest that allows some type of natural reflection. You know, maybe there is a pond or there's a small waterfall and they can see the reflection in that. Otherwise, this will quickly become a very deadly encounter for the party. Now, for level 2, the party gets a little bit stronger. They have a little bit more HP. A few of the players probably have gotten their subclass depending on what they're picked, and you can kind of pump up the numbers and the creatures a little bit more. If you want to do a more deadly encounter for level 2, you could do one, I think it's pronounced Keyydark. It's the kind of like Aztec serpent deity thing. It's a celestial dragon of sorts, and this one's going to be a little bit complicated on how you want to implement it into your campaign. They are technically good creatures, so they won't just blindly attack the party. If you wanted to have them as the big bad, you could have it being corrupted or tainted by someone, or just the fact that because they are protecting some location or sanctuary of sorts, that the party is viewed as invaders to the sanctuary, and that's why it is attacking them if you wanted to use that. The Keyydark itself isn't too powerful, but if you utilize it in a manner of kind of hit and run where it picks up the party and like displaces them and really splits them apart, that could be a way to utilize them. Well, regular encounters you can throw at the party would be using a giant elk. If they are in a more Fey type forest or just great forest, you can foreshadow some type of kingdom or newborn king with the appearance of this great elk that is protecting its forest. Because lore-wise, great elks are known to be very rare, very hidden, and only really emerge on the birth of like a new king. Obviously they're not born at the exact same time, but you know what I mean. If you did use Darklings at level 1, for level 2 you could have them encounter a Darkling Elder and lead up into a more Fey type encounter pathway, including more of these as they level up and continue on into this Fey forest of sorts. Because the Darkling Elder is obviously a buffed up Darkling, and it can also be pretty cool and wicked what it can do. Now, level 3 is where things get a little bit spicier. The next power jump being at level 5, but now at 3, every single player in the party has their class features and their subclass, giving them a really nice big power boost, assuming they did a multi-class. So for a deadly encounter that you can throw at them for level 3, you can use a Wyvern. I would highly recommend really flavoring the Wyvern up. You know, make it be camouflaged if you wanted it to like kind of surprise the party as they wander in, or kind of go Monster Hunter where the Wyvern is acting like the Raytheon and it's, you know, swooping down and it's the predator, the apex predator of this part of the force. It's like the defender, the top of the food chain here, and they hear it screech as it swoops down and tries to attack the party. If you really want to homebrew it up a little bit and maybe give it some different coloring, so maybe now it has a breath attack or it has more resistances and things like that, go for it. Wyverns can be a lot of fun with how you can really twist them and change them. Another fun one is I feel like UNTs as a whole are very underutilized in D&D. I think that's probably due to them being just kind of like a weird race that can be played, but also just because like snake people are a little strange. But there are so many fun UNT stat blocks out there, and a lot of the ones moving from 3rd level onwards will be including them. A deadly encounter for this would be like a UNT Malison. I think there were like 5 different variations of this Malison, and you can either roll randomly or knowingly go, oh yes, I want to have these weird features to it or attacks from it, because depending on which type they are, they have a different part of their body that is snake and changes what their actions are each turn. Now, you give this singular Malison 2 great constrictor snakes because they're snake charmers of sorts. I'm almost sure every single UNT stat block has some type of communication that they can do with snakes, and really just dive into that. These are snake master, snake people, snake everything. If you wanted to kind of still be in that reptilian snake type thing, I know lizard folk themselves are a little bit more common, but giving them the giant lizards as riding mounts can help spice them up a little bit. I feel like the giant lizards don't get enough love just because of what they are, but if you combine them with the more common lizard folk, then I think they can really be brought to life. Now for level 4, the party now has their feat or their ASI, so they have a little bit of a power boost, not too much with Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter and things like that, not really making too much of a difference because they're hard hit to their hit chance, so I wouldn't really worry about that too much. But for this level, you can really throw much more dynamic fights at them. I would say you could throw things like 2 were-tigers or like the were-bears. I feel like those aren't given anywhere near as much love as werewolves. Were-rats you could throw a little bit earlier than this point because they're a lot weaker. But yeah, you can throw 2 were-tigers at them, and if you were doing a more tiger-based campaign, you know, introduce tigers all around before they encounter the were-tigers themselves. And you know, once they get higher level, you can implement regular tigers with the were-tigers as they're fighting alongside each other. Another deadly encounter for level 4 would be things like the UNT Abomination. Just have fun with the UNTs. They have so many nice little quirks and things about them that make them a lot of fun. I don't think every single one of the UNT stat blocks has magical resistance, but that does help them be a little bit tankier against casters. For regular encounters for level 4, you could do things like 2 Ankhegs, the giant ant monsters burrowing out of the ground because the party got too close to their hive or their main nest, and they're just defending their nest and such. They sent out 2 little worker bees or 2 little worker ants or soldier ants out to, you know, check what's going on or to be bringing food back to their queen. Have fun with these giant ants. Another thing you could do are the Gricks. Now, when I first saw them in the monster manual, I'm like, what the hell is this? It's a weird tentacle beak land octopus thing. Really weird and wacky. But yeah, like, have fun. Throw these things at them and see what they can do. See how your party reacts to this weird big rock and then just latches onto them with tentacles. Like, what the fuck? Another fun encounter you can throw at them still at level 4 would be 2 UNT brood guards. Maybe the party has snuck up on the UNT settlement and has found where they're laying their eggs or raising their young, and the brood guards are patrolling, you know, to protect them, obviously. But yeah, you can really do a lot of things with how many different UNT minions and stat blocks there are out there. Now, level 5, things get really fun. As I said, this is the next major power jump. The party now has 6 attacks or actions they can do each round. Martial classes with multi-attack. Casters, full casters now have 3rd level spells. Half casters now have 2nd level spells. So at this point, action economy wise is really skewed towards the enemies in this encounter idea. But based on the hit points and the hit pool of each individual creature, it shouldn't be too bad, but it can get overwhelming really fast. This encounter would be 1 lizardfolk shaman, 2 swarms of poisonous snakes, plus 5 additional lizardfolk, just kind of to overwhelm mass numbers against the party. But as I said, they all have relatively small hit points in comparison to how much damage they're each individually dealing. But this can quickly get out of hand if the party is not prioritizing correctly or is not able to utilize their surrounding to kind of defend themselves. Another example for a deadly encounter to throw at the party at level 5 would be 2 shambling mounds. Again, I feel like a lot of these plant creatures aren't given anywhere near enough love. They aren't really shown or seen too much, but they can be really cool and creative. See how well prepared the party really is to adventure through a forest that is hazardous. If you want to implement some natural hazards like spores and other things to lead up to these plant encounters, go ahead and do that. I would actually highly encourage that. Add some difficult terrain, that just natural fauna around where the shambling mounds are. A bunch of thorny vines, so if they're not being careful, they're taking like 1d4 or just 1 point of piercing damage each turn, or just make it difficult terrain altogether and just really just dive into that plant-based encounter if you're going for that. Another idea, returning back to the UNTs, would be a UNT Pitmaster with 2 UNT Mind Whisperers. Mind Whisperers are kind of cool because they're just like psionic warlock type UNTs, And I think that idea is really cool to have. Kind of have like that scene from Harry Potter where he's hearing Voldemort's voice and just all the hissing and like slithering from the snake tongues. That could be a lot of fun to do. If you want to do something a little bit more scary, a little bit more like, oh man, here is the big boss, you know, they've been attacking the UNTs, really raising some hell, and the UNT's like, nah, we gotta bring out the big boy, we gotta really smack the party down. You can bring out the UNT Anathema. I've used this one personally against my party, and this guy he's nasty, but he is so much fun. How he can just do all these crazy things to them, all his attacks, and how monstrous he can sound and be if they are kind of like in a floating town where the town is like over a river or a small lake. You can have an Anathema come out of the water and just swoop in with all its snake heads and start attacking the party, kind of pulling at them from the waterfront, you know, pulling them off the bridge and such. And that can be crazy amounts of fun. Just really giving into that snake idea. However, if you want to pull away a little bit from the UNTs, you could do things like the spring or the summer or even autumn Eldarin if you so desired. I personally would lean more towards summer or spring just because I think they are a little bit more powerful, but their abilities can be very interesting with their interactions with the party. I highly recommend you almost always use their face step whenever it is available to them. It recharges on, I think, a 4 to a 6. So almost every turn that they can teleport, they should be teleporting and really just be splitting the party apart and picking them off by just with their high mobility. The summer and the spring Eldarin, when they do their face step, they have a chance to either terrify the party or charm them, and you can really just disrupt the party with just that singular enemy at this point, and properly using his stat block and applying tactics to him, making him intelligent and not just a monster that just runs straight ahead to his death. Now, pulling away from some of these more deadly encounters for level 5 party, an example of a more basic regular encounter for them, you can do things like a singular Gorgon. I know Gorgon, you might be thinking Medusa from Greek mythology, but Gorgon in D&D is actually like the iron bull that can petrify people. You can do a lot of foreshadowing with this one where they're going through the forest and they're finding a lot of rocks. Like, why is there so much rocks? Why are some of these trees petrified? Why is there so much stone everywhere? Or they can be walking into a statue garden of sorts that the Gorgon is protecting or using as their feeding ground. I would say be careful with the Gorgon because of their stomp ability. After using their charge, it has high AC, decent health, good damage, and a nice petrification breath attack to really split the party apart and not just let them all group up in one location and force them to really try to outsmart and outmaneuver this creature. Another idea would be if you want to introduce an Oni. Onis are actually kind of fun when you really read their stat block and understand that they can change their size and change how they look. Maybe this Oni is holding a town in the forest hostage. Maybe this is where his home base is. Or he's posing as a wanderer and he's trying to trick the party and bring them somewhere where he has advantage to attack the party. To go back to UNTs, I know, kind of getting a little old, but again, there's so many fun things you can do with them. You can also use 2 UNT priests if you want to have just a lead up to the big UNT fights. I think these are all the underutilized creatures I feel that you will find in a forest type environment. Hope you guys found this helpful and enjoyable. If you did, just let me know down in the comments. I think the next region is going to be the grasslands and then the coast for tier 1 play, and hope you guys find some new encounter ideas that you can throw at the party. But yeah, see you guys next time.